Today, we are back at Street Machinery, Hot Rods, and Classic Cars in Elucid, Ohio to take a look at this 1958 Chevy Biscayne. But before we take the tour, welcome to What It's Like. This channel, we feature the classics, vintage, some exotics, lots of orphan cars, and cars that are off the beaten path. If that sounds like something you'd be interested in watching, subscribe. And be sure to turn on the bell icon next to it to never miss a video. Before talking about the Biscayne, let's talk 1958 Chevy lineup. For the 1958 Chevy model year, Chevy offered technically three models of cars. The Del Rey was at the bottom, Biscayne was in the middle, Bel Air was at the top of the line, but they offered a penthouse option called the Impala. And then there was the wagons. Let's talk Biscayne. Chevy offered Biscayne as a trim/model from 1958 to 1972. Biscayne was named after a show car that was on display at the 1955 GM Motorama. Biscayne was the low-cost, no-frills transportation with lots of room, power, and comfort. Biscayne wore very little chrome, had smaller hubcaps. One could have the regular size hubcaps at an added cost. Rubber floor mats, lower grade cloth and vinyl, standard steering wheel. I'm just trying to paint a picture of what this car is. 1957, Chevy offered the Biscayne as a two-door sedan and a four-door sedan. Let's move on to the specs. Rides a wheelbase of 117.5 inches, 209.1 inches long, 77.7 inches wide, 59.1 inches tall. This thing weighs 3,450 pounds. Price was $2,250 and could go up to $2,790, which would be equivalent to you spending between $22,756.61 all the way up to $28,218.20 in the year 2022. Total 1958 Chevy production. Chevy had another stellar year in 1958 after being outsold by Ford in 1957. They had to come back with this. They sold 1,142,460 units, of which two-door sedans, they ended up selling 256,182. I could not find a figure on how many Biscayne two-door sedans they sold. This figure is for all the two-door sedans sold through all of their different model lineup. Del Rey, Biscayne were the two-door sedans. Bel Air was a sports sedan. It didn't have pillars, and the Impala was the same way. Biscayne offered three engines in a lot of different flavors. The 235 inline straight six, aka Blue Flame 6, came in one flavor. 283 V8 came in three different flavors. And at the top was the new 348 V8. It was Chevy's first big block. It came in five different flavors. Starting with the 235 straight six, 3.9 liters. It was also known as the Blue Flame 6. It produced 145 horsepower at 4,200 RPM. Bore was 3.6 inches with a stroke of 3.9 inches. Compression was 8.25 to 1, had four main bearings. The block or crankcase was made of cast iron, as well as the cylinder heads were cast iron as well, and it was fed through a two-barrel carburetor. Moving up the ladder to the 283 cubic inch displacement V8, it was 4.6 liters, 185 brake horsepower at 4,600 RPM, 275 foot-pounds of torque at 2,400 RPM. The bore was 3.9 inches, stroke of 3 inches. Compression was 8.5 to 1, had five main bearings. The block was made of cast iron as well as the cylinder heads, and this particular one was fed with a two-barrel carburetor. Moving to the next 283 flavor. The bore and stroke are the same, so we're not going to go over all of that again. 230 brake horsepower at 4,800 RPM, 300 foot-pounds of torque at 3,000 RPM. Compression 9.5 to 1. Bearings are the same. Block cast iron, and the heads are made of cast iron, which is the same. This one was fed with a four-barrel carburetor. The most powerful 283 on offer for 1958. It made 290 brake horsepower at 6,200 RPM, 290 foot-pounds of torque at 4,400 RPM. Bore and stroke are the same. Compression, I couldn't find a compression figure. This one is equipped with direct fuel injection. Moving to the last engine that Chevy offered in 1958 with 5 flavors in this engine category: 348 cubic inch displacement V8, 5.7 liters. The base engine made 250 horsepower at 4,400 RPM, 305 foot-pounds of torque at 3,800 RPM. The bore was 4.1 inches with a stroke of 3.3 inches. Compression ratio was 9.5 to 1. Had 5 main bearings. The block or crankcase is made out of cast iron, and as well as the cylinder heads were cast iron as well. 4-barrel carburetor on this one. Moving to the next flavor of 348 V8, 250 horsepower at 4,400 RPM, 355 foot-pounds of torque at 2,800 RPM. Compression was 9.5 to 1, 5 main bearings, cast iron block, as well as heads. Moving to the third version of the 348, 280 brake horsepower at 4,800 RPM, 355 foot-pounds of torque at 3,200 RPM. Compression was 9.5 to 1. This one had 3 2-barrel carburetors, aka tri-power. The fourth flavor of the 348 V8 was rated at 300 horsepower at 5,600 RPM, 350 foot-pounds of torque at 3,600 RPM with a compression ratio of 11 to 1. Moving on to the final flavor, 348 V8. It made 316 brake horsepower at 5,600 RPM, 356 foot-pounds of torque at 3,600 RPM. Compression was 11 to 1, had 5 main bearings. Chevy offered a bunch of transmissions in 1958. They offered a 3-speed manual, a 3-speed manual with overdrive, a 3-speed close ratio, 2-speed power glide, as well as the turbo glide. And based on the engine that you got, depended on horsepower output. That's why there's so many different flavors, because there's so many different transmissions. And for some reason, transmissions in the 50s, if one got an automatic transmission, it produced more horsepower. Why was that? In the comment section below. Let's talk about this door panel. Notice it's all one material. Feels like a vinyl. And at the top here, it overhangs and it tapers. Gets wider up here, gets narrower back here. Armrest / door handle, whatever you use it for. Door handle to get out. This is the window crank for the vent window. And this one's the window crank for the big window. And notice how this door is all framed in. Just look at the shape of it. And it's got to be that shape to fit this hole. People call these the dog legs, but I honestly don't have an issue getting in this car. This is how I get in it. I've never hit my legs off of it. I put my one leg in first. My knee doesn't even come anywhere close to hitting that. And then I just kind of slide in. And then when I want to get out, I do the same thing. I think it's easier. Like, my knee doesn't hit anywhere near that. And then just slide out. On to the button switches and knobs. Knob all the way to the left is for the headlights. Starting at the top, left turn signal. The speedometer is the long type and it goes clear across the dash. At the other side, or the other end, is the right turn signal. I just noticed just below the speedometer, there are 2 gauges in there, and they have to be for the amp and the oil pressure. But I'm not sure if it's an actual gauge or a light, because the angle in which I shot this, I didn't see it in the actual camera itself. I'm seeing it now. Coming back to the left, right next to the headlight switch, there is an oval gauge. It has the temperature in it, and then in the center is the odometer, and then on the right there's another oval gauge that has the fuel gauge in it. Just at the bottom of the screen you can see the gear selection. It says park, reverse, neutral drive, and I'm pretty sure low is the next one. It's just blocked by the gear shift lever itself. The wipers are located right underneath the temperature gauge on the left hand side. Coming back to the right side, this is the ignition switch. Just check out these keys. Just to the right of the fuel gauge is the lighter. Just to the right of the lighter is the radio with the radio controls. Ashtray location is located right underneath the right side of the radio, and on the left side is the climate controls. Notice it says defrost, and then there's one that's missing the tab that tells it what it is. It's probably for the blower, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Here's what over the hood looks like, what I look like. Lots and lots of headroom in this car. There's also plenty of room underneath the steering wheel, and this steering wheel is massive. It's no less than 18-inch steering wheel. Coming over here, let's do the glove box test. Here's our test subject. There's our glove box. Fits in there real good. Getting in the rear seat, just push the seat forward and it pivots out of the way. See how it gives you kind of like a pathway to get back there? There is no lock on the seat. Some of the later cars have locks on them, so you can't just push them forward, but this one doesn't. So getting in the rear, I just put one foot back like this, and I just kind of walk back. It's almost like you have to fall into it. Man, there's so much space back here. There's lots of headroom. There's lots of knee room for the size of the car. It's a two-door car. Coat hooks on both sides. Ashtrays on both sides. Armrest. See, this is an armrest because there is no door. Somebody put in the comment section that that's a door handle on the driver's side or passenger side door, but it's back here and it's not a door handle. Just saying. Window. And it goes all the way down. Notice there is a pillar here. But just check out how I love that line. It's not just plain square window like nowadays. And the rear windshield back here wraps completely around, so you have really good visibility in this car. That's what the front view looks like. Lots of visibility, as you can see. I'm a huge fan of the wraparound windshield. Another really good feature they don't put on cars anymore. Dome light up there. All right, getting down to the under the hood section. This one looks fairly straightforward. The lever's right here. Just pull up on it. This one's modified. It's got a dual master cylinder as well. No power brake booster. This thing probably hauls some serious butt. On then to the pros and cons section. I am getting all of these pros and cons from the complete book of collectible cars, blue chip auto investments 70 years from 1930 to 2000 by Richard M. Langworth and the Auto Editors of Consumer Guide. To be completely fair and honest, this car isn't in that book, but the 1958 Chevy Bel Air / Impala is, and they are virtually the same car. The only difference is this and the Del Rey, where the Del Rey was even more stripped out than this one. This one does not have as much chrome, doesn't have as many glitz or blitz or any of that stuff, but you could get all of the engine options with the Biscayne. You could get every single engine on offer. So for the positives, smooth if somewhat bulky styling, good performance. I'm going to leave out the last one because this one wasn't luxurious. Against it, far less recognition than the 55 through 57 models. 348 V8 is addicted to gasoline, handling sacrifice to smooth ride. Alright, on to name that tune. The way this is going to work is the first person that gives me the name of the band and the song title of the song, first one to do that correctly will be posted to the top of the comment section. I could have probably done that, but it would have took too much work to harmonize my voice in so many different ways. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching, and I appreciate all the support and everything else. If you guys like this video, be sure to give it a like so more people can see this video in the future. And until next time, toodaloo!